Hello. Can you hear me, Brent? Brent, I'm not seeing or hearing you there. Hey.
Hey there, young fella.
How are you?
Good. Getting water.
Jeff, if you can hear me, perhaps you can just put in the chat to make sure we are live. Thank you. Hey, hello, Melissa. Who do we have here? Melissa, where are you? Where do you live in the world? Or where are you now that we're all living at home? Great to hear from people. In San Diego. Well, welcome. We're here. I'm here in Santa Monica in Los Angeles. I see Christine here. Welcome, Canada. Hi. I hope Quebec is as wonderful as ever. So please put things in the chat for Brent and myself, and we'd love to know where people are from. I think it's a good time to go and get that cold drink.
That's what I did.
Christine, your third webinar today. Oh my goodness.
Christine, were you on with us in the last one? Oh, you were.
I think so.
I answered a question for her, and Sunit as well.
Hello from Ireland. I think Ireland is winning the furthest away competition so far. We'll see who else comes. I love seeing where folks are from. It is fabulous. Hi, Phyllis from New York. Brent, tell us where you are at the moment.
Where I am?
Yeah, I know you're on the phone.
Yeah, I'm up in North Carolina, and we call it the South Wind Farm, South Wind Retreat Center, and it's just outside of Raleigh, Durham. So if you were to fly into RDU, we'd be about a half an hour from there in a nice little farming community, and we have a massage therapy school that we got that was on the property, and we've used it now for education, of course, and retreats and even a wedding. And now we're trying to set it up so we can do a little bit of filming in there.
Well, in a minute, I'm going to ask you the same question.
Okay.
Sorry to jump the gun there. I see Chloe from Cologne in Germany. I think Chloe is winning the prize for the furthest.
She is. That's about 700 miles more further away than Ireland.
Yeah.
Let's see, Melissa. Where's Melissa from?
As she said, I think she said San Diego.
Oh, she did. Up high, yeah. One of my favorite cities in the United States.
Well, you and I collaborated a little bit when we came and supported your Polestar. What was that conference called?
You know, that was we used to have a conference every year, and it was great. You guys came in, and Jeff and did the filming, and we had a bunch of great speakers, and it was our first sort of collaboration together. It was fantastic.
Yeah, goodness, that's I don't know how many years ago that was.
That was 2011.
What? I really like that hotel right next to the harbor down by the conference center.
We did two there, and I agree. Great property.
Well, I see one of our friends here, Firuz. I think you have to put in the chat that you've come all the way from Istanbul. Yes, you did it. Thank you so much. Thanks you for joining us. It is fabulous.
Taking the lead.
Yeah, today, you know, we're going to start in like 1 minute here. I'm just going to let people come in and join us, and really excited about it as we kind of, everybody's getting the sense that Brent and I have worked together for, I don't know, nine years or something incredible, maybe 10, I don't know.
We're getting on that first decade there.
Yeah, we'll be out on the porch talking about good old days in a minute, you know.
I look forward to that. I don't mind that.
All right, I think it's time. Are you ready, Brent?
I am.
Great. I'm going to put my serious face on and or try to. I'm kind of happy to be with you. It's just a pleasure here, but I will be serious for a second. Welcome, everybody. Today, my guest is Brent Anderson. He is the president and CEO of Polestar, one of the most significant educators in the Pilates world. We've had the pleasure of collaborating with each other for nearly a decade now. And I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, Brent. Before we start, let's talk a little bit here. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A and we'll do our best to answer those. If you have any comments to put in the chat, put them in there. The subjects that we will be exploring today is we're going to talk about what's happened to Brent since the COVID virus started and how it's impacted his business. We're going to talk about the future of training and Pilates training and education, given all the changes that have happened. I'm going to touch on the economic reality of the toughness that this is going to be for so many people in our profession. And then we're also going to explore diversity and talk about diversity within the Pilates world. So let's start off. I know where you are, but tell everybody about where we're talking to where you are today and what's happening.
I was telling John earlier that Polestar still operates out of Miami. That's our headquarters. And like many companies, and including yours, we've become very virtual. So obviously, we realized that we operate quite well virtually. And Lizette and I bought a farm up in North Carolina that was a massage therapy school, and we now are using it for education, for retreats, and even a wedding. So we're enjoying that, and that's now where my permanent headquarters are, is in North Carolina. So I fly out of RDU wherever I have to go, and because of COVID, I haven't gone anywhere. I've been farmer Brent. I get on my tractor and I take care of things, that have to be taken care of, and I'm raising chickens and things that I never imagined I would do before as a city slicker from California and then Miami. So here I am in North Carolina.
Cool. So what's happened to Polestar as a result of COVID?
I think that, we're in a profession that, especially, our primary business is Pilates education, and the primary portion of our business is comprehensive training. So comprehensive training requires all of the equipment, and our particular style of teaching is in the studio with all of the equipment. So we don't teach just reformer or just mat or just, it's all together with all of the equipment. So, having isolation orders has had a major impact on the business aspect of it. It's like, how do you continue? We're right in the middle of mini courses, and all of a sudden people cannot go to the studios. We can't be in groups over 10. So you got a course with 18 people. What do you do? And so we've had to answer these questions. And right now, Polestar is in, I want to say roughly 66, 67 countries, depending how you label a country. And all of a sudden, within 2 weeks, 67 licensees and territories are shut down. So it was quite a blow. And I think that, sometimes we get this false sense of, ease or protection, thinking like, I'm in 67 countries. If there's a coup in one country, the other country is going to be doing fine. If they have an economic crisis, if they have a disaster, you're sort of thinking like, through the diversity of the countries we're in and the economies that we're in, that we were actually pretty safe. And, the reality is within 2 weeks, we were shut down completely. So, we've been very fortunate in the sense that, we've been working on our hybrid platform for education for like the last 5 years, and we've had it working now for 2 years in the United States. And so we've been moving very quickly to make sure that our licensees internationally now have the same ability to do some of the more virtual work. But what we realize is that, there's a huge shift. As long as we can't gather together with more than 10 people, and most of these facilities are still shut down around the world, it's a major hamper on the way our business was structured. And the only other thing I would add from that is, we had to make some serious changes. So we gave up space that we were using for our administration, and we went to virtual. And, we basically, it's funny because we've been working towards that for a while, John. Like we've been, sort of replacing certain employees that had a hard time with virtual and bringing people on that were very autonomous and able to sort of get things done independently. And we changed almost the whole culture of the administration business, which was, autonomous, productivity, deliverable based, and no longer, clocking in, clocking out, kind of old fashioned style of work. And so I think it's forced us to be, and thank goodness we're already starting, but forced us to be a much more efficient company. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, we Pilates Anytime, we closed on the 11th of March, which I think is 90 something days ago now. And we're getting into a new rhythm. We're kind of getting used to it. The office has been closed. We haven't been filming in the studio yet, but I hope to be able to able to do that safely soon. But all our employees are kind of scattered, and it's interesting. They're kind of scattering more.
Yeah.
I could do this from somewhere else. I don't have to be in the super expensive Los Angeles. So it's a new kind of world that we're in.
We had the same thing. Our office went from everybody being in the Miami office to 2 in Utah, 1 in LA, me in North Carolina, Gabriel in North Carolina. So it's like,
yep, yeah. It's so. What do you think? Is the future? Do you think there's a vaccine in a few months? Do you think it's going to be this change is permanent?
But the news came out yesterday that they got approval for moving into the 3rd phase of the vaccine testing here in the United States. And even with that being said, they're thinking that the earliest they would have something would probably be early 2021, which is still very quick. This normally would take 3 years, 5 years to be able to get through this kind of testing. So, I think our scientists are working around the clock and expediting, and, shout out to them for doing what they're doing. Thank goodness. But I think that, when we look at this type of a virus, a coronavirus, and in particular this one, the COVID-19, it often is described as a slippery virus. So slippery means it's got a very strong will to survive, and it's not afraid to mutate. So, and that's not uncommon. If you think of, a cold is a coronavirus. So, it's a mild one. We all get colds. We get a different cold every year. We build up antibodies in our body to the cold that we had, but it mutates, and next season we get a different cold. It's still the same coronavirus, a little bit of mutation on it. So my gut feeling when I talk to virologists and friends of mine in the medical world, their gut feeling is that this is not going to just go away. So it's sort of going to be around, and there'll be a combination of herd immunity. So we're sort of seeing that happening a little bit. Like New York probably will be one of the safest places to be in the next 2-3 years, because so many people were infected. And we're also learning that, 40% is the number I saw yesterday from a study of people that were infected by people who were not symptomatic. That's a pretty huge number. That's, we just don't know. So it'll be interesting to see why some people don't get get sick. I don't, we all hypothesize and say, well, people that are really positive thinkers and happy people don't get it, but that's not true. So, it's like trying to understand, is there some kind of resistance that certain individuals have, that they could be a typhoid Mary carrying around the coronavirus and not infect, not have symptoms themselves, but infect a whole bunch of people. And, if the thought is somewhere close to 40% of those infected were infected by people. And here's really the take home message. The more of us that get tested, the better we track it. And, the more we push forward with vaccines are our 3 best options. I think that it's just, and I think we're going to see regional isolations. I don't think we're going to see another global isolation. I don't think people will tolerate it. I think that, some of us would rather take, and I'm not saying for me, but I'm saying as humans, some of us humans would rather take the risk. And we've seen suicides, for example, go through the ceiling because of isolation. So just 90 days of isolation has really increased the number of suicide attempts or suicidal tendencies and suicides. So, we have to ask ourselves, like, how do you weigh this out? And the economic impact it's having on all of us. I mean, it's huge. And when anybody comes and talks to me about closing their studio down, the first thing I say to them is like, you are not alone, and this is not a reflection of you. It's not a reflection of your business skills. It is a reality for 30% of our world right now is on border of either having closed or going to close their business.
Yeah.
And we're in a people business, so this is really important for us. How do we deal with that?
So just to sort of go back to what you were saying, your view is we will have a vaccine, but it might be closer to being like a flu vaccine, which is good for some of the strains, but not maybe everything. I think we've seen that the COVID-19 virus slightly different in the west coast of the US than it is on the east coast. And so I think it's going to be hard. And I think, like you're saying, a lot of people are going to take different amounts of risk. So if you have a loved one that is older, that has asthma or a respiratory issue, you're probably not going to be rushing back into high-risk locations in the way that maybe you're young and you live alone. That'd be a different kind of challenge.
Yeah, and I think this is, I like to listen to some of the commentaries on this and looking at, the different viewpoints. And I think you're right. I think the main thing is just being responsible, and safe where we can be responsible and safe. So if you have to go to work, can you work in as safe of a space as possible? Can you, have the proper protective equipment? Can you, do you have a process when you come home of sort of like cleaning yourself before you would bring anything into your house? And even, things like, my son is super diligent with his wife about being respectful, and we're just dying to have him around. We want to hug him and kiss him and eat dinner with them, and they've really been respectful because they're worried that I'm older, I've had some respiratory issues, that they don't want to expose me to something that they've been going to protests and they've been doing those things. Even though they wear masks, they're really cautious of it. And I think that I respect that so much that they would take those precautions. And I think that's what we have to do. We have to do it in our work. We have to do it in our social life, and just be respectful. It's like we don't understand it well enough to take the liberties that a lot of people are taking. And I think it's where you can be safe, be safe.
Yeah. So just thinking about Pilates education, you think it's going to be a hybrid model, or do you think it's going to be a lot online? What if I was to take a poll start and say
education in general, right, has moved into hybrid. So I think in any university, elementary school, high school, this has forced us to explore what's been going on for years. So Blackboard's been around for a decade, D2L, all of these learning management software, we call them LMSs, have been around, and they work in every education scenario, whether it's corporate or vocational or primary and secondary or major universities. It's not meant to take the place of on-site learning or face-to-face learning. And I think this is where a lot of people have a phobia of the idea of, if we go to online learning, how could we be a Pilates teacher with online learning? But let me throw a couple scenarios out there that we've been exploring. For the last 5-6 years, we've used Pilates Anytime as our observation tool for our students. We've told them, if you want to observe us teaching, meaning like Shelly, me, Christy, Sherry, a number of the other Juan that have content on Pilates Anytime, this is a really inexpensive way to go in and watch teachers that are teaching the method that you're learning. It was always a complex situation to tell them they needed 40 observation hours, but we couldn't control the observation that they were seeing. So in this sense, virtual is great because they can rewind. What did they say? What did Christy say in this thing? And go back, and we can also engage them in conversation virtually. So it's like having a small group of 5 students that are watching the same video asynchronously. They can watch it whenever they have time, and they can type their comments in whenever they have time and be able to start building their eye to observe movement. So I think in that scenario, I don't think there's a better way to learn how to develop your eye than using an online, digital tool. I think that we're learning how to teach virtually. I think this now has to be incorporated into all of our systems. I think we have to learn how to set up virtual studios to be able to demonstrate and observe and grade and submit. So a lot of these software, you can videotape yourself teaching an exercise or demonstrating an exercise. You upload that 1-minute video, and it can be created by your mentor or your educator. So these are tools that actually, and then now the educator mentor can actually look at that video, make comments through these really good tools, and have them timed so the student now can watch their video again of them and see the comments or the video or the voiceover of the educator, the mentor. So these type of tools are great. Now, the bottom line is, and the biggest challenge is the idea of learning how to really teach with your presence. Like, how do you assess a body that you can't touch or that you can't see the whole body? And I think this is the challenge that we still, I don't think there's really a solid solution to it in a virtual sense. And medical schools having the same problem, and PT schools having the same problem. How do you teach a manual manipulation through a video screen? I can demonstrate it, but you can't feel my pressure. You can't feel the velocity. And this is the same thing with us teaching Pilates. So these are some challenges we're going to have.
Yeah, it's going to, we're doing some webinars at the moment. We did one with Sherry Betts, who you know very well, about virtually teaching seniors and the challenges of do that. You might see somebody a little bit wobbly, but you can't reach over, you can't hold them up. You have to be even more cautious about what's happening and think about what you're going to ask them to do before they do it.
Yeah, especially with these populations with special needs.
Yeah. No, I think it's going to be interesting. And I think there's a lot of things to be learned, but I also think this online delivery can be very effective.
Well, that's our hope, John. I think that, we're looking at this hybrid learning, and we're hoping that, if we're centralizing our cohort so that, we're making it so that the online learning, both asynchronous and synchronous, meaning that independent self-paced versus led and guided virtually, like we're talking now on Zoom, that will be controlled centrally in the education system. And then we will have small groups that will be meeting together in many different cities, which also, is sensitive to the idea that we probably have fewer cohorts during this time because of the financial sensitivity. We can make it more cost effective. We can make it more intimate and safe in the studio spaces, so they're not having too many people, no more than 4 to 6 people in the studio based on the size, instead of 12 to 18. And it used to be that if you were having a course, you'd have to have over 12 to make it financially feasible. But using the technology now, we can make it so that the in-person labs, what did you call it? The in real life, IRL?
Real life, IRL, real life.
IRL. The IRL of Pilates can be with a much smaller and a safer group. And, you can still have a pretty successful cohort by using the online tools. So that's our direction in the fall. So we're getting ready for that.
I really like this idea that you could have a class group, which was, maybe in a similar time zone, so it's easy to communicate, but many countries, and to get to collaborate with people from other places also is an amazing learning opportunity.
Well, that's one of the great things we've learned from this, right? I mean, I think people who were stuck, in this idea of like, I'm closing my studio down, I can't do anything. And then you realize that going virtually, that you're able to connect with people all around the world, like we're doing right now. And, how powerful is it? And this is a major gestalt for me because, I'm somebody like Shelly and myself, we're in the air, 150, 200 days out of the year, like travel. And we've been completely stopped. And there's no way that we can get to all the countries or all the people or the cities that we want to get to meet with, the Polestar family. And now all of a sudden going virtual, it's like, my licensee from Germany says, hey, can you meet with a group on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock your time? Yeah, I can be there. In Asia, can you meet with a group of ours at this time? In Australia, it's like, I am sleeping so well, and I'm able to maintain a schedule and to have my own health, not sacrifice my health to think that I have to be traveling all the time, and still have very intimate communications with small groups of 10, 20 people from a different country that are going through their training. So I just think, like, and Juan Nieto is doing some great things where he's broadcasting. So he has more of a Zoom in a class where we can see each other, and then the broadcast class that is a little bit more like Pilates anytime that he's doing just for his people. But he realized that Juan's been around the world a number of times with Renty and Pulsar, and he's a great enthusiastic presenter. And so now all of a sudden there's people like, oh, I could watch Juan teach a live class on Wednesday afternoons. Sign me up, $10. It's like, so it's changing, right? I mean, I think it's we have to pivot with it. And this is, you and I have talked about before. It's like, if you're closing down, a big studio that used to have 2 classrooms and 20 reformers and a whole studio, that's going to be a tough one to keep open. But could you reduce the space to 500 square feet and have it so it's a combination of virtual and private and maybe small group education, if you're in the education business, of 2 or 3 people, and getting your overhead down. And our licensee in one of our countries, a number of them have lost their studios. So you're not alone if you're in that category. And they've opened up small studios in their home, and they've gone virtual. And the 1 or 2 people that come in and they do virtual visits, and they're actually excited to have a little better quality of life, not to be handcuffed to $15,000, $20,000 of rent a month that a lot of people are paying for these studios.
Yeah. The world is, when I've been asked a couple of times, when will the world go back to normal? Not that I know what the normal was before. And I don't think it's ever going to be the same. I think that this is going to be a permanent change, and it creates sadness, but it also creates some joy that, I miss seeing my coworkers, but I love not commuting on the 405, one of the freeways in Los Angeles. So that time that I've got back is just fantastic.
Yeah, I agree 100%. There's parts of normal we don't want to come back, right?
For me, it was the commute, but I did enjoy being with people. I am a hugger. I do, and hopefully always with consent, but I like being around folks and interacting.
Well, that was one of the best things you ever did. One of the PMA things was to have the hugging booth. I think that was, it was just awesome, and sharing feelings, and your team did a great job with that. And I'm a hugger as well.
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, we created a hug deli at one of the Pilates Method Alliance conferences, and you could come into the booth and you could order different types of hugs depending on what you needed. And we had people volunteer to come and give hugs. It was a lot of fun. I love that. I'd forgotten about that. That was a lot of fun. We're kind of talking a little bit about how training is going to evolve, and we've touched a little bit on Pilates studios. And sadly, I'm also hearing the same thing. There's lots of people choosing not to renew their leases or to walk away from it. But I still think Pilates is going to be very much there, and I think it creates different opportunities. Do you want to explore a little bit more about what it might be like owning a Pilates studio in the future?
Yeah, I think that we put our creativity caps on, and we think of what happens to our target marketing population, like who's now our marketing target. And I think that it changes drastically. I think that people need Pilates, but I want to expand what Pilates is, right? So if we think of Joseph Pilates' philosophy, this is a very important thing, very dear to my heart. But the whole philosophy, Joseph, of achieving whole body health, exercise was just one of the 9 things. He talked about nutrition and sleep hygiene and mental hygiene and getting outdoors, fresh air, sunshine, balance between life stressors and work and play. And I think that some of us might find some niches that have greater virtuality in the sense like they can be conducted, they can be taught, they can be monitored that way. I think our mat training is going to drastically change. I think we'll be seeing a lot more mat than apparatus. I think we're going to move from thinking that, Joseph said contrology should be practiced every day. He didn't mean that people should go to studios every day. He meant that you should be practicing your Pilates mat exercises every day. You should be practicing your lifestyle every day. You should be correcting your posture all through the day. You walk by the store, you see your reflection in the window, correct your posture, right? So are we teaching the lifestyle, right, of our philosophy as representatives of Joseph and Clara Pilates? And, I think that it's just going to take some creativity. So ideally, like I was talking to somebody the other day, and it was like, if you had 400, 500 square feet that had, a reformer or a combo table and a chair and a barrel and a space for a mat, you can fit that in 400 or 500 square feet pretty comfortably. And you set yourself up to have 2 or 3 cameras now, very simple cameras that, the software now, we easily have multiple cameras coming into these kind of things. Doesn't take much, doesn't cost much. And you basically are set up anytime to either be conducting a virtual, to be broadcasting class, to be conducting a small group class, virtually. And then if you're in the education world, to be able to have 2 or 3 people coming in to do their practice time, so right there, if you are somebody who is doing virtual classes, and you're doing it where you're projecting the virtual class, like a YouTube Live or something like that, right? You get 5,000 people on your class. I mean, the idea is it's are you teaching really good classes, and are you refining that? And you might find that, life changes drastically. You teach one class a day with 500 people paying $5 because of the economic crisis, and all of a sudden you're now, teaching people to be independent in their practice of contrology. You add a little lecture to your, today the theme is, eating more plants. Today the theme is sleep hygiene. Today the theme is we're going to do a meditation after the class, and so you're able to start this broadcasting. Now the beauty of it is you can also record it. And so, I would even suggest, like, it'd be cool as Pilates Anytime to sort of partner with some of these people that are actually doing some really that are moving up and having some high quality work, is to collaborate on some of that content that gets recorded, and to be able to, work with an organization like Pilates Anytime. And that's a shift, it's like, and the other beautiful thing is maybe we're sharing content. So we say we have a group of presenters that have these small studios all around the country, and we connect somehow, maybe through Pilates Anytime, we connect. And now we have this library of live and asynchronous classes that you can choose to take a class from somebody, a great teacher in New York, a great teacher in Italy, a great teacher, and you basically subscribe to a higher level of your learning. So this is the pivoting we're talking about. Like, we have to be creative in how we're going to, work with people. I think that, whenever we can get our hands on somebody, I think, hallelujah, what a great experience. I miss, I'm a manual therapist. My hands are going nuts. Like, I got to find things to do with my hands all day long because they're missing the energy of working with people. Like, I'm used to spending hours a day touching people, right? Working on people's bodies. So that's a big, that's the real, I feel, loss in our profession right now because of these isolations. From a business standpoint, we have to pivot. We just have to pivot.
You were working in Pilates during I don't know if it's really the last 2 recessions, but the one in 2001, the 2008-9. And at that time, you saw a lot of change, studios closing. Do you have any wisdom that you could share with folks based on that experience?
Well, I mean, I think that what we offer is so fundamental in life. And, I think we have to make Pilates available to everybody. And I think it's just, it's when you look at a hard time like this, From a business practice, somehow we've survived these different events that have happened, from 9/11 to the financial crises in 2000. And I lost a studio in 2009 in Denver, Colorado. It cost me almost $1 million in losses that I still feel today, and I think it's, if we lose hope as a profession, then that to me would be the saddest outcome. We love what we do, and that should drive us to pivot and find solutions, even if we had to close down a studio, we had to sell our equipment to be able to, I have people that I know sold their equipment so that they could literally buy food for their family. Like, they literally were asking me if I could buy some equipment from them. I'm hoping that I could, and I'm not in a position to buy equipment right now, but I knew that, they were selling it for, 50 cents on the dollar to be able to put food on their table. And my heart breaks in that situation, because, the ability to recuperate after that is very tough. Like, how do you rebuild your practice? And my suggestion is, drive small props, drive it out of your living room, create classes that are really inexpensive that, you already have. If you have internet, you can make it happen. And, even if you're teaching and making a class that makes, $500 a week, that's $2,000 that's coming in with no overhead, So I do think that, this is, there's hope. If people just say, you know what, I can't teach with my hands on the equipment, I'm not going to teach. I think we got to go back and really think through and just, close your eyes. And it's not, the answer is not teach, teach. It's somewhere in between. And, it's like, if you don't have a studio, it does not mean that you cannot be a successful Pilates teacher, because Pilates is vast. And if we bring the elements in, the essentials in, then it gets really even more vast, because we realize that, part of what people love, and I remember teaching some classes just last month, and people were saying, like, you know what, this has been, and we hear this, all of us hear this from our clients, it's like, this has been the best thing of my day. And it's like, I know, but I couldn't touch you, and we weren't as a group, and it was like, doesn't matter. It was just so good to see the faces on Zoom and to hear your voice. And, people love our voices. They love the energy that they get with us. And so, start learning how to conduct meditations and other things, movement meditations and explorations of their body. And so be creative. I think don't give up on the profession. And there will be a normalcy that will come back into play. We're not out of this industry. We're, fitness is not going away, and movement of the body is not going away, and health is not going to go away. And so I think we're going to find that we have a very big role in managing stress and keeping people mobile and, finding peace.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. There's such an important place for us. I think it's just the delivery of our services is going to evolve and change. Much the way you talked about education is going to be different. I believe that. We have a question from Christine. I'm just going to read this out to you, Brent. How will Pilates instructor certification exams, how are they going to work when it comes to the pedagogy part? Am I saying that right?
Pedagogy, yeah. That's the least of our concerns. So we have figured out virtually how to conduct exams that we think even give us better information than the way we were doing it prior. So on the learning management system software, we can do the virtual exam, and we have a software called Respondus that keeps people from cheating and doing all of the written portion, and they can do it from home. It locks their computer. You have to show that there's space around you, doesn't have phones and books and things. And then the practical portion of it is, we are basically recording the practical exercises of demonstration, of teaching, of participating in a group class virtually, that we can actually see you moving, and we can grade. And if there's a question on it, thank goodness now we can go back and look at it and go, well, you marked her down for this, but she actually did the movement and she organized her body well, in this sense. So she, because a lot of times when we're doing the practical portion of the exams, there's a lot of subjectivity to it. In, was that a good quality movement? Well, what does that mean? What's the rubric of that outcome? When we talk about pedagogy. So I think that we'll find that the virtual examination is actually more powerful than being on site. I think the real challenge that I think we have is the real-time lab time with direct instruction and coaching and mentoring on the equipment, with practice time with real people. I think that's the challenge that I see us having the most in comprehensive education.
I'd like to, if people have questions, please put them in the Q&A. We will definitely answer them. We're lucky enough today that we have a couple of people who are going to join us in about 10 minutes. We have Portia Page and
Nice.
Carrie Macy Samper is going to join us. So it was totally unexpected and I really appreciate them. I want to give them a heads up just in case they need to put their pants on. And there's so many people in this world that only dress from the top upwards, so I'm told.
I don't have my shirt tucked in.
Brent told me earlier, he assures me he's got his pants on today.
I have my pants on.
We're not going to ask him to prove that. We have to talk about all the things that are going on, the conversations that are being led as a result of the changes happening in America. So I'm talking about diversity, I'm talking about Black Lives Matter. Do you have any thoughts around that, Brent, with the lens of the Pilates industry?
I do. I've spent a lot of time in a very sort of sad and angry space, just watching the injustice and those things, and yet not being Black has really made me want to seek to understand even more. Like I really want to understand from our colleagues and acquaintances that are Black, especially in our industry and even out of our industry, fundamental value and Polestar seek first to understand. And I just believe that this is the time, and it's finally here to really ask the questions and hear the real voices, not the ones that have been fake because of white supremacy and that kind of thing. Like, we need to break that apart. And when we bring it into our own profession, sadly to say, we are a dominant, white, wealthy, female business. And I don't think it's bad. I think what's bad is that we don't understand why or how to be able to provide these services to all diverse populations and communities. And we've been talking about it, but we haven't been acting on it. And I think now, it's time for the dialogue. It's time for the courage for us to stand up in solidarity with Black Lives Matters. And particularly now, I think that, we want justice for everyone. And there's a lot of injustice in the world. But right now is really the opportunity for us to stand with, our Black neighbors and, colleagues around the world, and support and stand in, however we can stand. I want to know how they want me to stand too. I don't know that I know that. I've lived a life of what I would consider a non-prejudice and anti-racist and equality-based life. But as I talk to people that are really willing to open up, I realize that I can do so much better. I realize that I have so much more I can do to stand for justice and to be a voice against inequality, especially right now as it pertains to our society and Black Lives Matters. As our profession, we talk about, I think that I'm asking anybody that has information. It's like we were at the PMA last year, and we had our first panel discussion of how do we make Pilates available to everybody. And of course, it was an all-white panel. And, being able to talk to Nikki from Chicago and Stella from, Southern California, and a couple other different friends that are Black in the Pilates community, and being told that, we're nowhere close. We're nowhere close to being able to understand what needs to happen to be inclusive. And we think, if you ask people, if you ask the board, if you ask individuals, they think they're being inclusive. We think we're being inclusive. We think that we are, not part of the racism problem. And just because we don't have feelings of racism and prejudice towards somebody does not mean that our organization is proactively working to diversify and to become educated and to understand, Black Lives Matters.
Thank you, Brent. As part of that,
and I hope I didn't do any injustice in any way. I mean, I don't consider myself to be in any way, shape, or authority on this, but I do want the world to know that I'm sensitive to it and that I want to learn. And even though I can't completely understand, I'll never completely understand. I'll share one story with you of one of the people that I've talked to, one of my students at the university. And she said something that really touched me. And she talked about going to university at an all-Black university and how the first time in her life, she felt that she was able to go to school and perform and be judged purely on her merits and not on the color of her skin. And I immediately thought to myself, like, have I ever felt like that I wasn't being judged for my merits in any aspect of my life? And the answer was immediately no. I have no idea what that feels like.
Yeah.
And it hurts, it hurts to think that, we have friends my whole life that, they, for whatever reason, did not want to engage in that discussion. And now they're willing to engage in that discussion, I want them to know I'm listening.
Thank you, Brian. I'd just like to talk about my Gia Calhoun, who is the leader of Pilates Anytime. She runs the Pilates Anytime business, and we work together a lot. She is doing a series of interviews on Instagram Live and talking about this very issue, about what it's like to work as a person of color in Pilates. You can watch it live on Instagram, and Gia, if you could just put something in the chat here. You can also watch her previously recorded interviews with two people, and it's a great thing to watch. It's hard, difficult.
When you told me about him, I listened to him and was also deeply touched. And I thought Gia did a great job of just sharing her feelings too, and facilitating, this content that I'm talking about, like to just listen and, seek to understand and not make any assumption whatsoever that we know what it's like or that we know what it feels like. I think that's the first and most important thing.
I'm sorry to do this, Gia. Do you mind being promoted onto the panel a minute, and you can talk about the next two interviews you're doing? I should have checked with you before. I feel sorry. I hope you have your pants on as well.
Take a minute if you don't.
I'm going to ask Gia to come on. I'm going to give her a second to prepare, but perhaps we can ask Portia and Carrie Macy Samper to join us for a minute here and just talk around education. And Gia, if you're able to join, that'd be great.
I was going to say, John, that next Thursday at 3:00, we have a panel discussion that is specifically addressing this issue. We've invited 4 individuals that will be helping us out and teaching us next Thursday at 3:00. So Fantastic. It's good to see so many venues that are speaking and teaching. So hi, Carrie, hi, Portia.
So more formal introduction of Gia. Gia and I work together all the time. We have done for longer than we can believe, 7 or 8 years now. And Gia has had a series of conversations on Instagram Live, and I'm going to let you talk about them, Gia.
Yeah, we're just talking about experiences being a Black person. I started in dance, so kind of with the parallels of ballet industry, or like ballet world and the Pilates world, because they're pretty similar. So I did the first one with Marimba Goldwatts, and then a few days ago with Chris Robinson, and then next Thursday at 2 p.m. Pacific time, meeting with Kira Lamb, and then the last week of June, the 25th, is with Michelle Sims. So we have, sorry, my dog's barking, different levels of experience in the Pilates industry with people like Kira and Chris, who have been teaching for years, and then people who are newer to the industry like Michelle. But we all have similar but different experiences as Black people in the industry.
Thank you, Gia. Please join her or watch the recordings. They're on Instagram, and they are really, really worth spending the time to look at.
And Gia, you're very humble. I think that what you're bringing to the table is I listened to it, and I brought my wife and my daughter to listen to it as well. It's very powerful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to share experiences so people kind of can learn what Black people go through and think about all the time, and why it's so exhausting when people hear like we're tired. Like, this is kind of showing why.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Thanks, Gia.
Carrie, I didn't know you were going to be here. Thank you for joining us, and the same with Portia. Carrie, can we just briefly talk about what's happening at Equinox and education there, and the whole gyms and studios? And...
Right, I know. Well, on March 15th, we had to close all of our 100+ locations, as everybody did, whatever size it was. And what that meant for us is a lot of the employees were not active either. Although I have to say Equinox really supported everyone and did really right by all of its employees, and I'm very grateful for that. And so we had a bunch of students in the midst of our comprehensive program around the world. So there was about 50, I think, that were sort of like in the middle of all of their hours. And like everyone, I just sort of got, all right, what can I do with them? It was a neat experience for me, kind of like what Brent was saying about getting to have that more personal interaction. I didn't really interact with the students in London or the ones in Toronto or things like that. And so having this space where we're all in the same boat and everyone's like doing the best they can. And so just to get creative with the types of coaching sessions I worked on with them on, listening to them, what did they need? What were they missing from understanding this work, and realizing how many resources we do have that we can offer, virtually in this way. And it was really important to me. And I have to say Pilates Anytime was a huge resource for all of them as well. And we're able to keep them feeling motivated to some extent, and, giving them something to look forward to. And, I think Brent hit on so many of those positive points of teaching a mat class with so many people. You feel like you're with them, even though it's, across computers, and just giving that positive experience for them. And then recently now we've started to be able to reopen clubs very slowly in a few states, and now just Southern California, where I am, is quickly reopening. And so that's a big jump start, and but also cautious. We've done a lot of work to figure out what are the protocols we need to now undertake in our clubs and in our Pilates studios, and to make people feel comfortable and secure. Brent.
Carrie, how are your teachers feeling about coming back in? Because I noticed that was the question I get over and over again from different studios, especially around the country, that are just, they're independent contractors, a lot of them, and I know yours are employees too, but it's like, how are they feeling about coming back in and teaching? Are they seem to be excited to come back in? Are they hesitant? Or half of them saying, I got a mother at home that I can't go back to, kind of thing? What's your
Right.
story?
Well, we've just scratched the surface with opening clubs and having people come back. So, but overall, most people are coming back for sure, and excited to come back. Definitely, there's people who are cautious, and I think as we reopen more, like I don't know, so we've opened like 8 clubs or so far in Texas and Florida and different locations. So Southern California just is beginning that process. So that's a lot more clubs for us. We'll see a bit more what that actually looks like as we start to offer people to come back and bring them in. I think that it's going to be a mixture, certainly we've taken such great pains to make sure that the employees do feel comfortable coming back. The precautions we're taking for the employees as well as the members, so far are making everybody feel very comfortable in that, or a majority of people feel comfortable with it. But I think it still remains to be seen. We've just began the process.
I should have given Carrie a much better introduction. Carrie has taught some amazing classes on Pilates Anytime, and I'm not sure I get the job title right, but she's responsible for all Pilates within Equinox. Is that about right?
Not quite. That's my boss. I oversee the Pilates education at Equinox. Yeah. And then the vice president of Pilates is Susan, who oversees all of the studios and the business of Pilates for the company. So she could better answer those employee questions on the return. But, she and I have been working very close together over the past few months. So, yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Carrie.
Of course.
And Gia, if you could just put a link in the chat to Carrie's classes on Pilates Anytime. She is a wonderful person. We've worked together for a
long time.
I don't know if I can do a better introduction with you, Portia. We've known each other so long. I don't know what your title is.
Well, obviously that's morphed over the last few months. And so I am the education program liaison at Balanced Body, but since my job was predominantly travel, I have been furloughed. So it is hopefully temporary, but we will see what happens. I'm still a master trainer for them and do the education. And I work in the gyms that are not open yet, but here in San Diego. And I teach for 24 hours. So they just had a big letting go of people yesterday. So that was a tough day for a lot of my friends and colleagues. I was one of the ones that was spared. So what that looks like you were saying, Carrie, it's going to be a very interesting introduction back into the gyms. And these last 3 months have been a really great journey and a learning time for me to experience the online training and to give classes online, via Facebook Live, via Zoom. And it's, things are slowly starting to gravitate towards something, whatever that might be.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to find out how hesitant people are to return to the studio.
Right, exactly.
The studio may well open, but doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be full of people.
Right. Going back to what you were saying, Brent, about it being a hybrid, I went and visited a friend today whose studio is just going to be opening, and he's right now doing a hybrid. So as soon as everything closed down, he closed his studio, but immediately started with Zoom sessions and had really good response from his clients. And now that he's opening up the studio in a smaller location, he's going to be offering both. And he set it up so that he could view his class on a projector on the wall. So he's got bigger Hollywood squares versus the little ones on your screen. And it's really effective. And he traveled to the East Coast by car a few weeks ago, and he did his Zoom sessions on the road. So
that's awesome.
yeah, really awesome.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of creativity that I'm talking about.
Yes.
That, you know, you repurpose a much smaller space, it has a bigger
Right.
outreach, and if he's able to
Yeah.
connect with, you know, so many, I think, you know, if you've already taught for Pilates anytime, you already have a following that's outside of your own,
Right.
you know, little bubble. And so it's like being able to capitalize on that a little bit and to optimize your space and to realize, just like we in business, we just don't need 10,000 square feet. We don't, you know, everybody working from home and being responsible, we now have 0 square feet, you know, for the business side of it. And I think when we look at, you know, our primary studio, thank goodness it's still running and surviving, and hopefully we'll be opening up in 2 weeks in Miami. But, you know, it's a 6,000 square foot space. So, you know, group classes and those kind of things are probably not going to be, but, you know, doing like what you said, put a big screen on the wall and the
Yeah.
teachers in there. And, you know, he's rented out and sold a number of his Allegros to our clients so that they can be doing Allegro classes with Beth, who's now up in New York and home up there. So, you know, there's just, it creates a tremendous amount of flexibility that we just never thought of before out of necessity.
We're getting towards the end of our time here. I'd like to ask each of you just like one last closing thought, piece of wisdom. Can be on any of the subjects that we talked about or anything else that you want to talk about, really. Can I start with you, Carrie, or would you rather ask Portia first?
That's okay, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. I think that this time has, and I speak for myself and I know many others that I've talked to, really taught us a lot about what's important and to slow down. I know that as soon as things started happening again work-wise, my anxiety rose again, and I was like, okay, wait, what did I learn these last 3 months? Let me go back to that. I was meditating, you know. So I think to be able to hang on to some of that, we really got back to our humanness and the ways, strangely, we were able to connect with our clients in deeper ways because there was space for that. And I just, you know, I'm focusing and trying to maintain that thought and that idea going back into, you know, more chaos. Again.
Thank you, Carrie. Portia?
Sort of writing on that, what Carrie just said, I find it really heartfelt and warming that we can still connect with people via a screen, whatever size that screen might be. And I just hope that we can remember to maintain that humanness, that introspective, soft touch that as Pilates instructors and movement practitioners that we already have, and really be able to carry that through and keep listening, keep reaching out, and just be kind.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I totally agree with the kindness. And what Carrie said about we've had an opportunity to live our lives in a very different way for a while. And that quiet time you mentioned, your meditation, is like, it always gets squeezed out for me. I'm like rushing around and I don't give that time for me. And we need it in this very stressful time.
Yeah. You're on the 405, John, that's why.
Brent, just so everybody knows that Carrie and I probably live a few miles apart. I live in Santa Monica. I think you're quite close.
Okay, I'm in Encino. Yeah, a few miles.
And the 405 is famous in Los Angeles. It's always the 405, like a proper noun. It's just famous for being 6 lines of traffic in both directions going very slowly. It's not a great avoidable place.
I used to live off of La Tijera, right on the 405. Our house, the pool backed up to 405 on the east side of 405. It was brutal. It was like you know, to me it got to the point where 405 was like, you know, music to put you to sleep at night. You know,
right.
It never stopped.
Brent, do you have some final words to share with our community?
You know, there's a quote from a prophetess in the Brahma Kumaris group. So it's a completely female monks, I guess, nuns, we call in the Brahma Kumaris. And Dottie Janki just passed away. She was the head leader of the group for many, many years. And I think she was like 100 years old or somewhere close to that. But she said that, that we need to be spiritual soldiers. And when one spiritual soldier is alert, there is safety for many. And I just think of the idea of awareness. You know, we teach a work that is built on awareness of body, mind, and spirit. And, you know, when we practice the elements of being alert and being aware, two things happen. One is we're more likely to be in sync with the universe and make better decisions. And two is we're able to see how our actions affect others. And I think that would be my, you know, sort of, we've had a chance to reflect on that. We've had a chance to really be aware and, you know, how do we identify ourselves? You know, being a Pilates teacher is a role that we take upon ourselves. Being a human being is who we are. You know, being part of humanity is who we are. And, you know, even if somebody took the role of being a Pilates teacher away from us, they can't take what you are talking about, Portia, the kindness away. They can't force us to not be aware. You know, nobody can take that away from us. And so that will, that deep, who am I answer, I think is most important thing that I feel has been very much brought to the top of the, you know, the surface for a lot of us to see and to be sensitive to see and understand. So I'm right there with you on that. And I just, you know, let's be good stewards of Joseph Pilates' work and you know, bring it to a much larger and diverse population and be creative and inspired. That's what we do, get inspired in Pilates and you know, take care of each other.
Thank you, Brent.
Thank you. Thank you, John, for the opportunity too. It means a lot to me.
Well, thank you, Brent. Thank you, Portia and Carrie, for coming on. And I'm sorry if I made you scramble for your pants, but I'm apologize for that. It's great to be with everybody. And I do feel like this community of all of the people that I've met over the last decade in Pilates have really helped me through, you know, the shit that we're experiencing right now. It's really stressful. And so my big thank you for the three of you, and my equally big thank you for our audience today, all the people that came and listened to us. And I really hope to meet everybody soon in real life. I am so looking forward to that. So fingers crossed we have a really effective vaccine sooner rather than later.
So maybe we'll have a Pilates Anytime Woodstock on the event on the farm. Everybody bring your tent and we'll just.
I would just love that. I would love it.
I'm there.
Time.
I'm there.
Great.
Anyway, thank you so much. Love you, John. Love you
Thank
guys.
you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye,
Good to see you.
Tuesday.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.